When I first received that thick envelope in the mail stamped with the cold black letters, "Notice of Violation," I thought it was some kind of mistake, the kind of clerical error you expect from a bureaucracy that thrives on paperwork and intimidation. I had lived on my farm for decades, tending cattle, mending fences, planting fields, and minding my own business. My land stretched for miles across rolling green hills, purchased honestly by my grandfather with sweat on his brow and calluses on his hands. We weren't the kind of people who bothered others, nor did we invite trouble onto ourselves. But there it was, printed in stiff legal language, accusing me of breaking rules I had never heard of and demanding I pay an outrageous fine of $250,000. The paper claimed I had structural violations, unapproved modifications, and even something called non-compliant landscaping. I nearly laughed at the absurdity of it. My farm was older than half the houses in this county, and suddenly some homeowners association claimed it had jurisdiction over me. The more I read, the hotter my blood boiled, until my hands trembled with fury and my vision blurred red. They wanted to bleed me dry, to bully me into submission, to treat me like some tenant trespassing on my own land. I crumpled that notice in my fist and swore no self-righteous board of pencil pushers was going to tell me what I could or could not do on property that had been in my family long before they had even built their cookie-cutter neighborhood across the hill. I didn't respond at first, thinking maybe silence would make them realize their mistake, but they doubled down. Another letter came, this time sharper, demanding immediate payment or legal action would follow. Then came strangers poking around near my property line, snapping photos like vultures circling carrion, pretending to measure grass height and fence angles as if any of that meant a damn thing to a working ranch. One even had the audacity to walk up my driveway and stick a bright red violation notice right on my front door like I was some kind of criminal. My dogs barked, my cattle stirred, and I felt the simmer of rage tighten in my chest. I marched out with my shotgun resting on my arm, not pointing it, just making sure they understood the boundaries of respect. The man, a smug little fellow with slicked back hair and a clipboard, stammered that he was just following HOA protocol. I told him his protocol didn't apply here, that this was my land, my rules, and if he wanted to keep breathing country air, he'd best turn himself around and never come back. He scurried off, but the damage was done. This wasn't a mistake anymore. This was war, a slow tightening noose designed to crush me under debt and humiliation until I bowed to their power. But they had underestimated me, underestimated the history buried in this soil, underestimated what I knew about deeds, property lines, and the quiet secrets of old land ownership that their smug little association never bothered to check. For weeks, the battle escalated. Police cruisers began showing up, not to arrest me but to check for compliance. The HOA president herself, a sharp-tongued woman in bright suits and expensive heels, marched down my gravel road with a stack of papers clutched in her manicured hands, shouting about legal authority and community standards. Behind her, convoys of cars filled with board members and gawking neighbors lined up as if my farm were some circus act. They treated me like a villain standing in the way of progress, accusing me of dragging down their property values, demanding I pay the $250,000 they claimed I owed. I stood my ground, leaning on my fence post, shotgun in hand, watching her face flush red as she screamed at me. "Pay the damn $250K. She shrieked, waving her clipboard as though it were a weapon. I looked her dead in the eye, calm as stone, and replied with the truth that froze the smirk right off her lips, "Lady, I own your whole block." She blinked, confused, then laughed it off, thinking it was some bluff, some old man's delusion. But I wasn't bluffing. I had the paperwork, the deeds, the dusty old maps signed generations ago, showing exactly where the real property lines were drawn. My land wasn't just the farmhouse, the barn, and the fields, it stretched further, much further, right underneath their perfectly manicured lawns, their cul-de-sacs, their playgrounds, and even that fancy clubhouse they built with such pride. Their entire neighborhood sat on land leased long ago from my family, and when the developers failed to renew properly, the ownership reverted back to us. They had built their empire on soil that wasn't theirs, and they had been living in my shadow without even realizing it. The realization hit them slowly, like cracks spreading across a frozen lake. At first, the HOA president scoffed, saying my claims were nonsense. But when I invited her to the county records office and laid out the dusty scrolls and notarized stamps in front of the clerk, her voice faltered. When the lawyer I hired pulled out chain of title documents showing continuous ownership since the 1800s, her smug expression turned pale. And when a judge, forced to review the evidence in a preliminary hearing, admitted there was merit to my claim, the color drained completely from her face. They weren't the landlords here, they were squatters dressed in suits, bullying the very man whose land they stood on. The crowd that once jeered me began whispering, some even looking fearful, because deep down they realized the nightmare they had unleashed. They had poked the wrong bear, and now the bear had sharpened his claws. I didn't raise my voice, didn't threaten, didn't need to. All I had to do was stand tall on the soil my grandfather bled for and remind them that no fine, no matter how large, could outweigh the truth etched in those deeds. The war wasn't over yet, but the tide had shifted, and for the first time, they understood I wasn't a man they could push around. I was the rightful owner of everything they called theirs, and soon, the whole world would know it.